Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order our June 9th Town Board meeting. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Okay, thank you. We have to approve our prior minutes. May I have a motion to approve the May 12th, 2014 regular town board meeting minutes?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So moved. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of our May 23rd special town board meeting?
Motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Any announcements? Does anybody have any announcements? First, I'd like to say that we all marched in a lovely Memorial Day parade, so I'd like to thank Wayne Reifenberg and the American Legion Post for another great parade, and also thank you to the Rhinecliff Fire Department for the parade before that. It was a lovely day. Our pool is open Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 7 p.m. until the 28th of June when it goes to the summer schedule. So we're almost there. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, we have some...
Rhinecliff Day.
Oh, thank you. Rhinecliff Day is coming up June 14th, this Saturday, at the beautiful, wonderful river in Rhinecliff. There'll be lots of fun activities, including for children. So come with your families, come with your friends, come with little ones.
What's the hour?
When does it start? I think 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? Oh, we have Bobby Fitzpatrick here to make a presentation about the town hall heating system and the front steps. Which would you like to tackle first?
We'll do the heat first. So I'm Bob Fitzpatrick with Buildings and Grounds. And we've had an ongoing boiler problem, amongst other things, in the town hall. The boiler was installed in 1962. We have a leak in the firebox. We have frequent water steam off, blow off from vacuum collection box, and we used approximately 3,400 gallons of fuel oil last season. So together with Bruce and Elizabeth, Bruce asked me to give our consulting engineers a call for their recommendations. And I'd like to introduce Richard Meser and Scott Hendricks to talk about our alternatives and where we're headed with the heating system here in the town hall.
Bob, I'm sorry, how many gallons a year?
3,400.
3,400. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Yeah, Rich Messer with Weston and Sampson, who are the consultant engineer for the
Yep.
town. And I have Scott Hendricks here. Scott's been heavily involved in doing boilers and that type of work, so he's got a lot of expertise. He's done over 100 schools in his career doing the same type of thing, converting or looking at heating systems and changing them out relative to either steam or oil, et cetera. So anyway, Scott and I and Bobby walked around earlier this afternoon, looking at the system, and Scott has a few ideas relative to the best way to move forward. I'll give a general synopsis, and then if you have any questions, we can field and answer them. But generally, I'd say that based on the history that Bobby talked to us about, the existing steam piping, et cetera, is in pretty good shape, and he hasn't had problems with it or with any leaks. That being said, the key component for moving forward would be to seem that the steam would be the lower priced approach, which is the existing heating system that you have. And obviously the boiler is aged and needs to be replaced. And there's some details that Scott looked at and discussed to help make the controls to be more individual to rooms versus the way it is now. So generally, that's the overview or kind of the key components. It looks like STEAM would make sense. I think the next steps relative to our effort would be looking ahead as far as giving a proposal to do some engineering so that at some point near future it could be bid and reconstructed. So anyway, we're open to any questions that you may have.
Scott, are you on staff at Wesson too?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay, thanks. I mean, there's a ton of questions. Bruce, you probably have the most. No?
If we went with the steam, we would pretty much get out of the asbestos abatement issue or not?
I believe you have asbestos in the boiler room right now that would need to be addressed, but it would be localized to that area.
Just in there? Okay. I mean, I get called every day from the county wanting to know when we're going to get a budget because of the grant submission, so.
Elaine, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm just waiting for a budget. That's where I am.
What about NYSERDA? Is that going to apply to this? Is it not going to apply to this?
It's not going to apply directly to a heating replacement system. It will do nothing for a boiler. The only way they would do something like that is if we were able to convert to natural gas, which we can. So they have other funding alternatives available to us that would help us contain costs, additional equipment, for example. In fact, they have some heating and refrigeration possibility, that's equipment, which the Garrison Library is installing. It's an electric-powered heating and cooling system, and it would help control costs. It like shifts the heat and the cooling around the building, so you could have it go from one zone to benefit another one that's not heating or cooling with the same consistency. So something like that, he said, would help control costs and would give us an opportunity to maybe buy a cheaper boiler system or like have something less than what we think we need right now, because it would work to keep it more efficient, but it won't replace the system.
Is this something you could take into consideration when you're looking at engineering for this? Or we could give you the NYSERDA information and see if there's anything we could capture or?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that would be a complete change in the approach. So that would be more of an alternatives analysis versus really where we're at right now, which is trying to use the existing system and look at what's most effective for that. And based upon, like I said, the initial review, you have a lot of steam piping, et cetera, throughout the building. And the most cost-effective approach, and considering that piping's in good shape, is to continue to use that piping. If you went to electrical heating and cooling, I think that would be
It wouldn't be switching. It wouldn't be an alternative. It would be what he called like a perfect marriage of equipment. One would help reduce the efficiency of another. So we would still need a heating system. But it would help to contain the costs. It would help to distribute heat more and cool air more efficiently throughout the building.
Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about now is strictly heating, so I'm not sure on the cooling portion that you're mentioning.
Yeah,
what
I
that
was
is,
hoping
so-
he was going to be here tonight because he's able to really talk about this. He's able to articulate how it works with a heating system, because I thought it would be an alternative too, and he said no, it would be complementary to. And he's able to explain it very well, but unfortunately he couldn't be here tonight. He can come to a future meeting, but he's well versed on this stuff and how they work together with systems.
Well, I think if you could have the information sent to us, we
Sure.
can quickly look at it and determine,
I can
based on
also
our...
give you his contact information if you have questions for him directly you'd like to ask, if you think that would be easier.
Yeah, I'd like to see what he's proposing first, so if he...
Well, maybe you ought to talk to him.
Yeah,
I
'cause he's not-
did talk to him, and I'm not sure it's even comparable.
Right.
So I think maybe a call to him, and maybe we'll save a lot of his time.
We just
and
don't
all
want to
that.
leave any NYSERDA
Possible.
potential
I
grant money on the
understand.
table. If there's
We're-
any way we could capture any of it to help us.
We're always conscious of
Yeah.
that, but sometimes to try to
Bruce is-
capture that, the price tag for your
Yes,
work goes
we're
substantially
aware of
up.
that, but we just would like you to put eyeballs on it. Bruce has a grant into the county for some infrastructure replacement for shared services, so we're trying to overturn some rocks for funding.
Absolutely.
Now, what would it entail doing an engineering study for this? What are you envisioning, or what do you?
I'll let Scott speak to the details, but what would be happening is that we would be putting together a proposal, and I guess there's some existing drawings of the building that we would utilize to try to put together some sort of performance specification and information that you would be able to go out and bid to get this work done. And with that, there would be some basic drawings and some details to understand what has to happen to convert the existing system into the improvements that we just talked about.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it pretty much would be plans and specifications for bidding. There was no discussion to date about a study of any sort.
Is there anything more than just getting a new boiler? It's a steam system now. If you're going to go with a steam system, aren't we just asking for prices of furnaces that make steam?
I think you've got some existing condensate issues that need to be sorted out, for starters. In addition to that, I think the control system could be certainly better than what you have at the moment. It provide better comfort, and also probably some cost savings, because you wouldn't be overheating spaces.
Which we are doing now.
Which we are. It's 80 degrees in one room and 50 in another.
Yeah, that's pretty typical for
Yeah.
what you see here in a
Yeah.
building like this. The other thing, again, I'm concerned with the condensate system and the vacuum. There's a vacuum condensate tank, and my experience with those is that they just don't seem to last very long. It's very difficult to maintain a vacuum, and getting your condensate back to the system is very important for efficiency. It's also very important on how the system works. You can actually have distribution problems with the steam because the condensate backs up or things like that. And you get that sorted out, you put together a few drawings and some specifications, go out to bid. That's exactly what we're talking about.
How,
You got an, I
I'm sorry, go ahead, Alan.
was going to say, have you got an idea of ballpark what this is going to cost?
I've had about 20 minutes in the building, and I haven't put pencil to paper, but you're probably talking between 150 and 250,000, depending on mostly the level of controls that you're going to want. If it's self-contained controls, it'll be a lot less. If it's something that's integrated into a building management system, it'd be certainly a little more.
How much for the work for you to put together a bid specification package?
Yeah, I'd have to look at that more closely, but I would include that. That would be part of the 150 to 250
Well, I
range.
mean, I don't think we're going to, you're 150 to 200,000, but the first step for us is to get a bid package together. We're not awarding it to you. You're coming,
No, the first step would be, we'd give you a proposal telling you the next steps and how much that would cost. And then you can determine if you'd like to go forward with that or not.
can
But
you
Bruce,
clarify?
we can put the 150 to 200 into the county as the ballpark?
Well, we've already said 250.
Okay.
You said 150 to 250 though, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, but we said 250, we said we would save 70,000 over the life of the system, and we asked for 50,000, because that's what we felt we could get.
Yep, that sounds within our ballpark numbers from 20 minutes of walking around.
So what they're doing right now is they're doing the consulting engineer thing. They're
Yes.
not doing the bidding and everything else.
Right.
So this is just to tell us what we should be doing, considering, right? So,
Is there any idea for the consulting engineering part of how much that would cost us for you to put together the bid package?
That's what we're going to provide to you in writing, so.
Great.
I gather that the steam system is not efficient, and there are, if we went to hot water, it would be more efficient, but we're constrained because of our piping to stay with steam.
What you said is true. The steam system is probably, well, as it exists right now, I wouldn't even want to guess at the level of efficiency, but with proper controls, you could get 80 to 82% efficiency out of a steam system for this building. If you had a hot water system and you really push the envelope, you could get like 93 to 95% efficiency. So there's about a 12% difference in the efficiency of the two systems. Actually, I'm sorry, you'd have to switch to propane to get those levels of efficiency out of a hot water system. You cannot do it with oil.
But the problem is that we'd have to remove asbestos throughout the building and
And repipe.
in effect close down the town hall for a while.
Yeah, I would not recommend using the existing steam pipes in an attempt to try to make them into hydronic pipes. It doesn't work very
We
well.
don't have the infrastructure in place for the hot water.
That's correct.
Let me just throw this
I mean,
out since we're,
it can be done. In my experience, it's between 2.5 times to 3 times more expensive to convert a building like this to hot water than it would be to try to renovate it as steam. Again, the key issue is the quality of the piping as it exists. My understanding is it seems to be in very good shape. As long as the piping is in good shape, you can kind of get around the periphery and fix all the little bells and whistles that you need to make the system work correctly.
Okay.
The furnace itself, we're talking, what, about 30,000 per furnace? So the rest of that is the adjustments in the piping and to try to get zones, is that the right word?
Remove zones valves, right? Take out some of the zone valves, take out some of the traps. The boiler is going to be about 35 to 50,000.
Yeah, I think the price you got, it was for a hot water boiler. They're a little more expensive to go steam. There's more what they call appurtenances, that controls and issues that go along with the steam boiler. I wouldn't want to hazard a guess at the price of the boiler itself at this point. I mean, the numbers we're looking at are kind of square foot numbers at this point in time.
Should we even consider a cooling system, or are we just not set up for it?
It's really just a matter of cost and how much disruption you'd be willing to put up with. But it's certainly possible to put a cooling system in almost any building. I mean, it's done in historic buildings that have much more to preserve than this building.
Is that something anyone wants to consider for this room or some of the rooms?
That might be something that's covered under this thing that Jeffrey Domanski brought up, the electric-powered heating and cooling, because it's not a furnace alternative. It's for the distribution of temperature control. And I think it would be...
We need a delivery system to distribute it.
But I think it's all part and parcel of this. It's like new technologies. That's why I think it'd be really good when they have a conversation, because they'll speak the same language. They'll understand what each other is saying. But he seems to feel really strongly about this, and that it also helps in your fuel costs, because the way it works with the distribution of air, whether it's hot or cold air, is it's meant to keep the cost down, like other heating and fuel costs. So he said you'll see your fuel costs go down. The library loves it. They had theirs installed. They got some grant money for it too. It didn't cover all the costs, but
Okay.
yeah, so it's really worth.
Our library here, the Star?
No, Garrison Library. Jeffrey told me that they had just installed it. So it's new technology, like I said, but I really think it's important to talk about.
I think we were talking to Bobby a little bit about that, maybe you want to mention, but I think part of the cooling issue is having the space and ductwork to have that in the building someplace.
It's not that kind of cooling system. It's a new technology. In fact, he said the central box looks like an air conditioner. It doesn't involve all the ductwork. In fact, if it's helpful, I can read you. A library has what they call a Mitsubishi variable refrigerant flow. And it says, variable refrigerant flow zoning is an energy-efficient method of providing precise comfort control to indoor environments. VRF offers a wide variety of applications, everything from spot cooling or heating a single room in a home using a split ductless system to a large commercial building with multiple floors and area that require individual comfort control delivered by a split zoning system. VRF moves refrigerant to the zone to be heated or cooled, allowing the temperature of that area to be more precisely controlled. It can simultaneously cool some zones while heating other areas, or just provide comfort control to zones that are in use. Zones are single or multiple room spaces that are conditioned to a set temperature and are operated independently from other rooms within the same structure. Ductless systems provide more building design flexibility and result in more usable space. Ducted systems allow you to combine multiple rooms into a single zone. Unlike other VRF systems, Mitsubishi Electric Cooling and Heating uses a two-pipe design which reduces the complexity, time, and cost of installation with fewer refrigerant lines and connections. Inverter compressor technology is highly responsive and efficient. The technology allows for compact, quiet units, flexibility of placement, and gives architects and owners more design freedom with integrated, simple-to-use controls.
So that's like the little box that's outside in the high wall unit with the pipes running up the side of the building, or the tubes. You see on a lot of houses now? That's what that is, it
Okay.
sounds like. And to me, that sounds like an add-on for cooling, but not necessarily for heating. It would help to keep the the room temperature up maybe, so you didn't use as much oil. But I think they're two separate things from the way that sounds.
Well, this is the Mitsubishi, what Jeffrey described to me, that's why I really wish he could have made the meeting tonight, but he's in Sullivan County. It works with both, and he can explain it, he can articulate it in a way that I obviously can't because I'm not familiar with the technology.
But they're going to
We'll let
call
them
him.
speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Right.
you'll talk to him.
So what do you, we need, you're going to write us a proposal telling us what the costs will be to achieve the next step of what we need to do.
That's correct, yes.
Is there any way we can get this done? Are we in the right time frame period? It's June now. We want to be warm in December.
Yeah, ideally, we'd be out to bid at this point in time already.
We're a little behind schedule.
We are. I mean, luckily, it's not a tremendously complicated project, so it could be executed fairly quickly. You are going to be probably at the end of the project up against the clock.
That's okay. Well, we'll, hats and mittens again. Thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions, comments? Thank you for coming, John.
When you're ready, I assume we can have special meetings of the board so we don't hold this project up, because I know time is very sensitive on this.
You want to give us the number right now?
Oh, sure.
As soon as you have,
Okay, it's
you know,
Jeff. His
proposal
last name is
material,
Domansky,
let's get it rolling.
D-O-M. Okay. It's 646
Couple days, okay, good. We'll be here.
483
3,
1338.
3, 3, 8.
Now, our next meeting is on the 23rd. It's in 2 weeks. Do you think you could have
He said a couple days.
okay.
Right, why don't we have an emergency meeting?
As soon as I
if,
get some information, we'll decide how to handle it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a good night.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks
coming.
for coming.
Bob, we have you for one more issue, I
Front steps.
think. Don't go in it, right?
Yep.
Front steps.
Front steps.
Thank you.
I'm the
Our
sublime.
front steps and side steps are in disrepair. So I'd like to ask for us to, I need some prices on it, first of all, but request for proposal, I'd like to draw up one for, I don't think we need an engineer for it. I have a design that I'd like to offer you
You're-
through one of my masons, but I need to ask you to give me the approval for a request for proposal.
No, and you're proposing that we rebuild the whole
Yeah,
infrastructure,
we want to
too?
tear out the existing steps and rebuild
And
with
reface
slates.
them, new
Yeah,
infrastructure?
the whole thing,
Great.
provided the footings are in good shape.
Well, we'll
Reuse
know-
the footings.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
Number one, yeah. Trying to keep it so we don't go out to public bid, hopefully.
So you will put together something, run it by us, and we'll approve it
Yep.
at our next meeting?
Yep.
And we'll reuse all the
Reuse the
railings
railings,
and
yep.
whatever stones we can. Great. Thanks, Bob. Anybody else have any questions for this?
Go
You're
to
gonna-
it.
You want to do, I guess the dog kennels is slated a little further down, or do you want to do that while Bobby's here now?
I don't think we're ready.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bob.
Bob, I'm sorry, where are the dog kennels?
They're down under committee reports.
Oh, sure, we can do that. I'll take this out of order if anybody doesn't have, and then you'll be able to go, Bob.
So do you want me to start with a little background?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
So back a couple of months ago, I took some photos. I got a call from Roger Newkirk, the animal control officer, about the conditions when it rains in the dog kennels. Apparently, they practically flood,
Yeah.
which is causing real problems for the dogs. He has, in fact, most recently, I think he had to ship a dog or two out to a different kennel because of the water situation. So I guess the board needs to make a decision about how to address this. I think some attempts have been made to at least address the water issue, which doesn't seem to be working. So I think we need to decide whether we want to move the kennel or raise the kennel. And that's what Bobby's here to talk about.
Elaine, do you know where he shipped these dogs? You said he shipped them to another kennel.
I don't, but I can find out.
So Bob White and I took a look at it the other day, the dog coop, and there's been fill brought all the way around it throughout the years. It's no one's fault, mostly because of the salt shed that was built and the grade has been raised. So what I'm recommending is different things. You can try to reuse the dog coop, but we want to raise it up approximately 2 feet. Lay block around, fill in the inside, put another slab down, reuse either the existing one or go out and buy a new one. If you buy a new building, new fence, all the work, we're guesstimating between 15 to 20,000.
How many runs do we have?
3.
And we would
We
get
need a
a...
new fence. The fence is in disrepair. It's rotting. If you keep the original one, all right, deduct 4,000 or 5,000 from that, but
But we definitely need a new foundation, and maybe to do
it
some
needs to be
grading.
raised, right? And then we'll put drainage around it when we raise it. But Kathy and I have talked. She's in agreement with keeping it where it's at, correct? So,
Is 2 feet going to be enough?
Well, the experts will,
another would be 32 inches. So Bob and I looked at it, and, you know, if I needed another course, it's not going to cost that much more to raise it. But we'd pitch everything away, the grade and what have you. Kathy'd put drainage in. There is some rot there, you know.
what's
it's
our
not
next
good.
step then? RF going out, pricing out?
Yeah, I've
an
gotten
RFP for-
prices on buildings. One fellow gave me a price of building and the fencing, and the other just the building. The building's like 4,000, the fencing is another 1,000.
What are we getting for 4,000? Is it
You're getting a-
insulated? Is there
You're getting a
electricity?
16 by 20 building, texture 111 siding, shingles, architectural shingles, a door, a 3L door, entrance door, 2 windows, 30 by 36. I'd have to finish the inside. And I'm recommending, if you've ever been in a butcher shop or something, like a plasticized finish on the inside, waterproof. It would need to be insulated, it would need to be heated. So we're guesstimating, Kathy and I both talked, we're guesstimating between 15 to 20 by the time it's done, if we buy it.
Have you looked into any of those, like, prefab places
Yeah.
that will make it to
Went
spec
to
for
Bay
us?
Horse, and I went to
Brad's Barn.
Brad's Barnes. I got prices from both. They're similar, 4,600 and 4,000, so.
Elaine, does Roger feel that the 3 kennels is sufficient, the 3 runs?
Yeah, I don't think he had an issue with the number, the space. I think it's more, in fact, one of the questions I was just about to ask Bobby was about some of that rotted pipe, because his bigger concern was, A, that the dogs were literally submerged in water
Yeah,
at certain
we
points.
can't, they're,
And the other thing is in the back, the metal, the fencing, it was actually so rotted that smaller dogs could get through.
Yeah.
Those
So
were
it-
his 2 main concerns.
so it needs to be
Oh,
replaced.
it
We
has
know
to be.
that,
It really
right.
does. It's bordering animal cruelty,
Yes.
frankly, if you ask me.
There's no heat in there, they're
Right,
freezing.
and imagine all that water and there's no
Yeah,
heat and they have
yeah,
these electric heaters.
yes.
I mean, it's a
So
scary
what's our
situation.
next step? Do we have, what do we need to do?
In the fall, you have to make a decision, if you want to do a new building, or, Roger says there's a lot of mildew. The odor's pretty bad inside, and there is some rot,
Gotta be
so,
replaced.
I mean, it's 27 years old. I talked to Roger tonight, he couldn't be here. I'm recommending you buy a new one, new fence,
And put a foundation.
and raise it up, yep.
Do we know how many dogs we have over the course of a year? And I think it...
We receive dog reports every month. I think they're all on file.
Okay.
Yes,
I
we
think
do.
I think we ought to look at that. I think it's very, very few dogs. That's my impression. I could be wrong. And I'm wondering, instead of spending 15 to 20,000, maybe we could put the dogs in another kennel if there's one available in the surrounding area. Now, I do remember that High Park came to us to see if they could use our kennel. I don't know what they're doing now, but maybe we ought to explore whether there's an alternative to having a kennel here in Rhinebeck.
I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is then we're asking people to travel further, to board dogs, pick up their dogs.
Yeah.
For our dog person, it's gas, time.
Yeah. But, if it's a very small number of dogs and the cost is substantial, 15 to 20,000, we ought to at least know that, explore.
Right, but the number of dogs at any given time is fluid. I mean, there may be relatively few dogs now, but
what
what's
is-
Well, let's see
to
what,
say that's not going to change or next year? I mean, in fact, I think we're turning into more of a dog community than we've been in the last 10 years. Seems like people are more pet-oriented. But I don't know if I'd want to bank on the fact that there's an X number of dogs each year that are very
I
few.
think this is a service we provide for the community,
Yeah.
and we need to have,
Inadequate
we need to
kennel.
have, exactly,
I mean,
I
it really,
agree.
you should really go check it out. It's like near animal cruelty.
It is, it's horrible.
but it certainly doesn't harm anything to look at the facts as to how many dogs we have.
No, it doesn't.
Well, we do have the facts there. We
Yeah,
receive
we ought to
dog
look.
reports every month.
But I don't think our decision should be based on that because that's a fluid number.
Let's see what...
I agree. I think we have an animal enforcement officer. This is a service that we do, and we
Right.
have to have an adequate facility.
Right, yeah, and we're asking him to travel further to, I mean, I don't know, I just think if you weigh it out, and if you're basing that purely on the number of dogs, I just frankly think it's wrong-headed to do that, because that number can change.
Kathy, could you come up, please?
I just want to make sure I heard some of the information right. Did you say that the current building is 27 years old?
Yes.
27 years old, and if a new replacement building is $15,000, that means your costs for operating that was about $550 a year.
Yeah.
For housing the dogs. And I think Elaine raises a very good point about travel time. I mean, we've been very lucky here in Rhinebeck to have a local dog warden that's been able to return dogs to their homes very quickly without a dog actually getting lost in a system, which is what happens once they're shipped out somewhere to either an SPCA, whether it's Columbia County, Ulster County, or Dutchess County. All three have programs like that. So this is something that just based on community history now, when it's come up, has always been a very hot button issue. And I think that this is something that people feel is a community service that, their taxes are covering. And as I said, that's a minimal cost of $550 a year, basically, for the cost of a building.
Well, I'm in favor of it. I'd like to see it with heat. I'd like to see there be water there if we can. And I've seen the building many times, both, occupied and unoccupied, and it's a sad state to see those guys in there.
Let me ask Kathy a question. You don't object, Kathy, do you, to finding out some facts? Okay, good.
I'd like to see the numbers too.
Well, are you guys going to compile this?
I'll look at it.
Okay.
I just want to
Could
know,
you, yeah,
where are the dogs going now?
you have to,
Are the dogs still going there now?
Yes.
Under these conditions?
yes.
They are.
Although during the heavy rains this spring, he did have to outsource them.
He has a place to send them.
Yeah, and I gotta say also, thanks to everyone at the Highway Department, because I know that Kathy, your guys are very kind to these dogs too, and help find homes and take care of them. Yes, adopted homes and taking
nice.
care of them before they're returned, so it is a town effort.
One of our employees has adopted two of them.
All right, well, does
Very
anybody
nice.
else have any questions? We're gonna look at some data, and Bobby, when would you need to do this? Is this like a fall project after? Okay, okay.
But one more question, Bobby, was the issue addressed with the hole, the gap where the dog was getting out, the smaller dogs?
Fence?
Yeah, was anything done at least to Band-Aid that in the interim? Can we do something about that so he doesn't have that problem with smaller dogs?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Elaine, thanks,
Thanks,
Bobby. Joe and Alan, you guys are going to look at the dog reports and come up with some data for our next meeting?
Why don't we just ask the dog guy?
Go ahead. Yeah, get whatever data you'd like.
You want me to do that? I mean, I'm liaison to the...
Yeah, why don't you ask him
why
if
don't you get
he
him-
knows how many dogs he has, and go back 4 or 5 years, so we can see what the trend is, if any. I understand, people may have objections, but let's at least
I don't know if he's
see
gonna
what the
have-
facts are.
I don't know if Rogers keeps data like that for 5 years. I'll certainly ask him.
Let's ask
But
him.
I think Elizabeth said before, we have that data already, because we do get the dog reports. So wherever that data is, we have that here. I don't
It's in
even
the
know. that-
clerk's office.
Yeah, so maybe that's the place to go.
John, you have that data?
He files a report once a month, but somebody would have to go through the monthly report.
And compile it.
To figure it out. Probably be easier just to ask
He
him.
probably could
Okay.
give it to us off the top of his head.
Okay, I just don't know if he'd have it for 5 years, but I'll ask him. I'll ask him.
Great, I think we're
A memo. with
good on
some
the
data
kennel and the
would be
dog
good.
information. We know what we need to do, and we'll move ahead. Bob, I guess, did he leave? Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much. Wherever he went, where'd he go?
Moving on, is everyone okay with this? Any other questions, input? Patricia Wind is here from our Rhinecliff Waterfront Committee with Rod Morrison, LRC consultants on the Rhinecliff Landing.
Thank you.
Thank you, big presentation.
Hey, this look familiar? Thank you very much.
Do we have it available in PowerPoint for the public, or?
I think we have the final
Okay, then
version
we're,
that I have changed so much just in the last 24 hours.
great, so you'll talk us through this.
Can we put it on our website?
I can send it to you as a PDF if
Yeah, that
you want to
would
make it
be
available to
great,
the public
yeah.
from here.
Please.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so what you're looking at is just a picture of the Rhinecliff Landing. So I'm here to present from the Rhinecliff Waterfront Committee on the progress that we have made so far in the DEC grant that we obtained and started working on in July. So I'll just kind of browse through this. Before we get started, though, I just wanted to remind everybody what the purpose of this committee, the Rhinecliff Waterfront Committee, was. So if you flip to the second page, the purpose that the committee feels that we serve is mostly to increase awareness of the access that we have at the landing at the Rhinecliff. We want to maximize this access to the waterfront in a way that benefits everybody. Create a community space that can be enjoyed by local residents, promote the Rhinecliff waterfront as a destination attraction for visitors, and build a stronger connection between Rhinecliff and Rhinebeck when it comes to tourism. On the next slide, you'll see, I feel that the second point I made about maximizing access to the Rhinecliff waterfront in a way that benefits everybody is very important. This is a community space, so there's a lot of people to take in consideration when we look at what we want to do down there. So I've just sort of laid out some of the everybody that we're talking about here. That includes day-use boaters, large commercial vessels, Rhinecliff and Rhinebeck residents, visitors to the Rhinebeck area, the Rhinebeck crew team, which we'll get into in a little bit, existing Rhinecliff businesses, and emergency services. Specifically, the grant that we are talking about tonight is a DEC grant that we obtained to do a feasibility study of the Rhinecliff waterfront. The grant is $30,000 from the DEC, and there's a $10,000 town match. This was applied for back in 2008. It was approved in July, and in September, the town contracted with LRC Group, who we have here with us tonight if there's any questions at the end of the presentation. So just to refresh everybody's memory what we're talking about tonight. So the summary of the feasibility study, these are the points that the study needs to address as part of the grant application. So by the time we finish the feasibility study, we will have wanted to cover all of these points that we see here. The first one is traffic and parking solutions for increased use of the landing at the river. Identify ways to minimize erosion and safeguard against rising water levels. Identify ways of stabilizing the bulkhead and methods of protection or reconstruction. Provide for increased use of waterfront by large vessels. Guide the placement and configuration of seasonal floating dock systems to diversify day-use boaters, and determine feasibility of a boardwalk north of the bulkhead along west side of the access ramp. So where we are in the feasibility study, I have compiled a list of organizations and individuals that we've consulted with and met with to this date. These include Senator Gibson and his office to gain information just generally on the area and support and grants that are available. We've met with Dan Miller of the DEC, and he has advised us so far on a way to form our development project so that it is friendly for achieving future DEC grants. Colleen Cruikshank of the Chamber of Commerce for partnering with community events that we can plan to hold down at the waterfront space. The Rhinecliff Hotel, James Chapman, and coming up with parking agreements and arrangements to help solve some of the parking issues when we do hold special events down there. Amtrak and CSX to discuss lease opportunities for expanding our space into some of their spaces that they have available down there. The Rhinebeck Police Department, Sergeant Dunn, we had discussions on safety, signage, and lighting. Rhinebeck Fire Department, Henry Campbell, also we discussed safety and accessibility. Dutchess County Tourism, Mary Kay, was very helpful in identifying tourism activities that we could bring to our waterfront that are in demand in Dutchess County. Rhinebeck crew team, Ralph Bosco, the coach, We've met with him and discussed possibly creating a home base for Rhinebeck crew to use at the Rhinecliff waterfront. And we've just recently discussed with the planning board about reviewing the LWRP for the development.
How, CSX, is there any opportunity there for us to get any more space, or?
Yes, I think so, and I think that Rod can talk about that.
Okay.
As we go through here. Just a couple pictures that you have here of the existing conditions you'll see, if you want to just flip through the next two slides. And then there is an overview of the existing site. You'll see that if we sort of start from the left side of the page and move to the right, on the bottom there, it says the existing sidewalk does not connect to any walkways throughout the landing areas. One of the things, actually, that I didn't put on this slide about who we've discussed with was the ADA, what was the organization? There was an ADA study, an accessibility study done of several waterfront spaces along the Hudson. And unfortunately, the Rhinecliff did very poorly on our assessment, and I can make that available. Actually, I think it was made available to the town and then given to us. But so you'll see that the existing sidewalk does not connect to any of the walkways throughout the landing area, and you'll see that through the entire landing space. Once you get from the pavement, if you wanted to go to like the bench seating area, if you were wheelchair bound, the grass
You couldn't do it.
is not an acceptable.
What is the red line? There's a red perforated line.
Property boundaries.
Okay.
An approximate of the property boundaries, I guess, okay. Existing asphalt needed for the boat launch vehicle turnaround should be upgraded, maybe for multi-purpose and foot-friendly. Again, on the bottom here, you see no firm or paved surfaces for embarking or disembarking large vessels. So if a large tour boat pulled up and wanted to use the deep water dock that we have there, there's really not sufficient access there at that space for people to get on and off of a large vessel, and again, cross the green path to the paved area. Moving right, you'll see that we've identified root growth between the sheeting and the timber bulkhead caps, and that just, speaks to the bulkhead and its disrepair, and that it needs to be upgraded and maintained. And, just you can kind of read through these. The slab at the top of the gangway makes for inaccessibility to floating docks. Again, if you wanted to use the floating dock system that's there, that is the taxi ferry dock system, the height increases between the different surfaces is, at some points more than 4 or 5, 6 inches. Again, it's not accessible for a handicap wheelchair. Again, no accessibility to the picnic tables or the grills or the benches. So really a lot of this that you see in here talks to the accessibility for the ADA compliance study that we had looked at. And then the planter walls are in okay condition, but they could be a future issue, and we would look at redoing those and making them a little bit more maintenance friendly for the future. Any questions so far on that page? The next, you'll see an overview of Rhinecliff again. As you look through the hamlet, you see that we've identified that we should provide more comprehensive signage for pedestrians, bikers, and cars. I know personally, several times I've said, meet me down at the Rhinecliff landing, and nobody actually knows where to turn to get onto the ramp to get down to the Rhinecliff landing.
It's a secret, yeah.
Yeah. So if we had, more adequate signage for visitors, there is a designated bike trail path that goes through Rhinecliff, And again, if we could identify on that bike trail path signage to direct bicycle users down to the waterfront, it'd be a great stop for them to make, come sit down and hang out and rest for a little bit while they're on their biking journeys. On the north side of the landing, you'll see a little layout for a proposed boardwalk with observation deck and fishing platform, floating docks, and launching docks for both the crew and for paddlecraft kayakers, a spudge barge for dock and day boaters, and then storage under the ramp for the Rhinebeck crew team and seasonal paddlecraft storage. So one of the things that we have seriously looked at and considered in the feasibility study is making the space under the ramp, if we were able to lease it from CSX and Amtrak, making that into storage space for seasonal kayak rentals and also for the Rhinebeck crew team to store all of their sculls and their equipment there. Currently, the Rhinebeck crew team leases space at Marist to store all of their sculls and their equipment. They pay a very large sum of money to Marist to do this, and it has been expressed from the Rhinebeck crew team, parents, coaches, that if they could move their home base to Rhinecliff, that would be very beneficial for them and possibly for us. So in talking to CSX, one of the things that we are very interested in seeing is if we can lease the space under the ramp to turn that into some sort of storage area that the town could then lease to the Rhinebeck crew team to gain some income from the space for maintenance and so forth forward. If you look on the south side of this photo, you'll just see some expanded boardwalk, fishing area, more docking space for day use boaters. And then the next couple slides are just a zoom in then of each of these spaces, the north and the south, showing exactly what some of these improvements and infrastructures are that the LRC has currently come up with and proposed as possible solutions for the 5 points that I mentioned in the beginning. And at that, I would open it up for questions.
What concerns me, looking at this, is we have a one-person maintenance department. We have to take in the existing docks. We were convinced to get a dock because of the ferry. We don't have a ferry anymore. That existing dock requires equipment that we have to rent that we don't have in the highway department. I would love to see design with that in mind, that future boards should not be saddled with the expense of maintenance of a lot of fancy floating docks here. I don't know how it's going to be paid for here. I don't see one of the objective is concern about maintenance. And at least my experience with this floating dock for the ferry, we wasted $26,000 on it. It's not used for a ferry. And I think whatever plans are designed should keep in mind, and to the extent that we can make improvements on shore and we're not saddled with pulling stuff out of the water at winter time, I think that really should be things that we focus on.
If you look at the last slide that has all of the possible improvements, I guess, just quickly estimating, I would say that 70% of it is land-based. So
70%?
I would, just looking at it, I would guess to myself that 70% of it is land-based improvements.
7-0.
7-0, yes.
Okay, but that means 30%.
So 30% would be water or a seasonal floating dock system that would then require the maintenance
But
that
this is,
that you
we're
talk of.
talking about expanding the use of our waterfront. This is really the only access that the whole town has to the waterfront. And so
Right.
this is making an investment in infrastructure that it would allow for more people to have access. And yes, there would be more cost, but we would have more access and more space for more people.
Right. One of the points I also just wanted to make was that even though $26,000 was spent on a ferry dock, it has not been
We use it for
useless.
other things, yeah.
That ferry dock is used every single weekend. I have used it dozens and dozens of times in the
Kayakers
last
use
2
it,
years.
day boaters use
I
it.
see it in use all the time. So even if it doesn't serve the purpose that it was put there for, it serves another purpose, which just shows us that we need more of this space down there.
Patricia, doesn't
Or
the
this
development
access.
also give us opportunity for more income?
Yes. So, well, first of all, as far as this development goes, one of the things that the LRC group is also working on is identifying grant sources to do this work. Of course, that doesn't address the
Will that be
maintenance,
for
the
maintenance?
long-term.
Will that be for maintenance?
Of course, that doesn't address the long-term maintenance issues that you have brought up, but just as far as initial work, one of the things that the LRC group is working on is identifying grant sources. One of the good things about us scoring so poorly on the ADA accessibility
'Cause there's-
exam
could be
was that
money there.
there definitely could be money there. So any of the improvements that we do, if we can tie in the fact that they make it more ADA accessible, then we can tie in, grant money for that, for
it's-
it.
you know,
So-
you-
Isn't there also an opportunity to collect fees? Like if we're using that below the ramp, I mean, we could conceivably rent that out. I
Right.
mean,
So I don't want to throw, inaccurate numbers out there, but my understanding for the Rhinebeck crew team for what they spend to Marist every year for leasing that space is somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000. They also have to pay for school buses to shuttle the kids back and forth for practice, et cetera. So whatever the town would come up with as far as a storage space for the Rhinebeck crew team and developing a lease.
Pay for a lot of
there's
maintenance.
Definitely a lot of money potentially there for something like that. In addition, we would like to see kayak storage units for kayaks that would be seasonal, where I could rent a space for the whole summer for $100 and keep my kayak down at the waterfront. And it would be, private. I could put my own private lock on it. And if we did 20 of those, you're looking at $2,000 for the summer season for just kayak storage rental. I personally had put a feeler out there 2 years ago to see if this is something that the community would like. And within just a few short weeks, I had a dozen names of people that would be interested in renting out a seasonal kayak space. So yes, as far as generating some money and income, there are definitely possibilities
Yeah,
associated
but really,
down there.
what we're talking about is developing a community space that everyone can enjoy. It's amazing, in the time I've been living up here, and you take the train down to Manhattan, and you see how the waterfront has developed. It's just fantastic to see. There's so much more opportunity for people to be out on the river, from here to Yonkers to, 125th Street, so.
Right, and there's definitely potential for a kayak rental business there, a bicycle rental business there. After talking to Dutchess Tourism, Mary Kay had told us that there is no bicycle rental on the actual bike trail through Dutchess County. So we would be the only ones. And, how great would it be to get off the train, rent a bicycle in Rhinecliff, and then go for a bike ride, bike into town, and then stay at your hotel for the weekend. So there's definitely a lot of economic benefits associated with developing the waterfront as well.
Thank you.
I brought Henry and Rod from LRC Group, the engineers here, so if you had any questions specifically towards the engineering portion of what's been looked at so far in the feasibility study, they're more than happy to answer any other questions.
Question. Are there docks, floating docks, that are capable of staying in the winter? Can something be designed or if you have a dock, it has to come in.
The answer is yes.
Just because I have the
Would you,
microphone.
would you introduce
Yeah,
yourself,
yeah.
everybody?
Rod Morrison from the LRC Group. I'm an engineer, and for Henry Thomas's benefit, he's a landscape architect, so I can't be categorized as an engineer. In this location, I don't think you could do it, just because of the ice action in the
Tides
winter.
The tides and the ice?
The tides and the ice, yeah. I think the ice is much more of a factor. But our conversations with the DEC about this spot are, in essence, if you go into the river, the most sensible thing to do is to drive pilings and have removable docks. Not terribly different than you would expect. But no, I don't think a permanent fixture in the river, especially with all the permitting effort that would have to go with it, is feasible or reasonably realistic.
How confident are you that CSX will rent that space?
Well, we're starting to have conversations with them, and we've identified the right people to talk to, which is a process, because you have CSX, you have Amtrak, you have New York State DOT, which is in control of the rails to some degree at this point in time. So the idea is, of course, that if we could retain the rights to use space, there wouldn't be a transfer, of course, of property. But
Right.
that division line where there's this conversation, and you'll see on those maps, the potential to extend a walkway or wharf up parallel to where the ramp comes down, really sits on the division line between the Hudson River and lands controlled by CSX. So it would be, without a doubt, a cooperative relationship and a lease-type relationship. But the possibility is very good, it seems like, at this point. So we're pretty optimistic about it.
Okay, I mean, to me, that's very exciting that possibility exists now. It didn't a few years ago, as far as I could tell. But if we could do that, then Joe's maintenance problem may be reduced, because we could put a ramp in over the riprap and just pull the docks over there and up into the area under.
Yeah,
Except for
absolutely.
the spud barge, everything
Right.
would be okay.
We're really sensitive to what would be suggested to be created and what kind of work it would take to maintain it. So the goal, of course, is, as the supervisor points out, is to increase public use, enjoyment, benefit, and I agree with you. As I've spent a working career going up and down the Hudson, you've seen each community focus on their waterfronts, and each of them go through really dramatic improvements. And as we've had these conversations with the different people, as Patricia points out with Dan Miller of the DEC in particular, this continuous theme of funding for ADA improvements, so for improvement of those surfaces is currently a great opportunity. There might be more as we go forward. So the point of what we will create in this master plan document is really the backbone of what can be pursued over the course of years from different town boards and from different committees. There's a very important dividing line in what can be done. Basically, everything above the water line within that bulkhead, with the exception of probably getting a permit from the planning board, is doable from today forward. If you want to pursue something in the river, there's time involved with getting your Army Corps and DEC permits. For instance, as I said, for driving pilings, even if it's for removable docks in the future. Also, interestingly, when you look at those plans, there was equal interest from people in going north and south, extending a walkway or extending access in either direction. So what we've concluded at this point is both directions are possible. And really what it comes down to is what becomes the most available path to grow the use of that area.
But the storage you want is only north, yes?
Correct.
Storage for cruise shells, any of that would be, we very much prefer that to be underneath the ramp coming down. Absolutely. It's not hard construction work to create a shelter in there to use. So.
Just a note about the potential diagram that you see. This is just what's potential. Definitely we're not trying to go out there and do everything. We wanted to throw all the options on the table for you. And it would be something that would be built over years and years. So we'd pick, what we wanted to see first, put our efforts and money towards that, and, and sort of give it a timeline and number each individual piece. Spud barge might be 10 years down the road, but redeveloping the surfaces and the accessibility could be year one, the boardwalk year two. So definitely it's a lot to take in, the overall master plan, but that's just what it is, a master plan. and we can cut things out, we can add things, we can change the timeline for these things to occur.
What's the next step for us, Patricia?
Well, we are only about 50% of the way done through the feasibility study. So at that point, we would want to, identify what part of the master plan we want to move forward on first, and we want to identify funding for that. So that does bring up a good segue to the next little topic here, is that when we met with Senator Gibson's office, they had indicated to us that there is quite a bit of funding available for waterfront development through the CFA grants. Unfortunately, they only released the CFA grants on May 1st, and the deadline is June 15th. So there's really not a lot of time in there to look at them, decide what you want to apply for, and move forward with a grant application. The grants, so far from what I see, are all 50-50 matches. So as a committee, we sort of felt very hesitant to put a lot of effort into looking at the CFA grants because the deadline is so quick and there would be a lot of work to be done.
Is it something we could shoot for next year?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's something that we could shoot for next year, but if, if the board wanted to support us going for CFA grant this year, we would definitely try to do whatever we could to make that happen as far as the committee goes. But it is a 50-50 matching funds. So.
And it's, June 9th, so we've got, it's doing it.
Fortunately, the application process is pretty easy. It's all online. It just would be several hours worth of answering questions to apply for the grants.
Is this something that anyone wants to consider, coming up with matching funds? Do you think it's too tight for us? Bruce, Elaine?
I think it's doable. I think it's tight, but I think it's doable. You know what I'm thinking? I wonder if one place to start is like the signage. Seems like a small, relatively small, but a very helpful place to start.
Or the
I think
ADA.
it's worth applying because we may not even get approved, but at least it'll get us familiar with the process, because you're right, it's not a cumbersome process. It's not lengthy. It won't take all that long. It's just responding to a lot of questions. But at least it'll give us a sense.
Don't we have some Rhinecliff money available in one of our capital funds for like the walkway or something that we could encumber for something like this, Bruce?
Well, we had the Hutton Street Bridge money.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit left in that, yeah, we could do something with that. Yeah, I mean, these things you can go with in kind and everything else if you can get there. You got to submit the application in time. So.
Do you have, what would you start with? What would you, if we were to say, go ahead, let's write one for this year?
Well, signage is a good, first step. Maybe, some small improvements, repaving, handicap accessibility. I don't know, like I said, we sort of hesitated on seriously looking to do the grants this year because we would hate to apply for a grant and be funded $20,000 or, whatever, and then have to withdraw or forfeit the grant because we couldn't come up with the town match for it.
Well, that's why the town applies for the grant. You advise us, and
Right.
so we would have to commit the funds.
Don't we also owe some money on the consultant? I thought we were paying 25%. We haven't come up with all that money yet, have we?
No, we have. That money was, I believe, already set aside when the grant was applied for originally, and is still there with the town, if I remember correct from our meetings in July. So because we're only 50% of the way through the feasibility study, there is the additional 50% of the town funds that need to go for the match.
Did we encumber that money, Bruce, or we're...
I think the numbers are a little, the chronology is a little off. I don't think we've hit September 2014 yet, right? So I just...
Oh, sorry, the wrong date. It's September 2013.
Right, so,
Bruce.
I mean, just the history of the grant it was before I was on the board. I know that
Right.
seems like a long time ago. And then we changed it in 2008 to a feasibility study. But at the time, there was something in the minutes that said they agreed to match it. The town board agreed to match. I don't remember it being encumbered, ever.
My recollection is the grant was $40,000 and we paid $10,000.
Yeah, it's 30 plus 10.
30 and
yeah.
10.
So we still owe some money on that. I assume you want to get paid?
The payments have been, 2 payments so
Yes.
far have been submitted and processed through the
Right,
town.
we've
so-
we've all signed off on it.
Right, right. So we're only 50% of the way through the study, so only 50% of the payments have been made to date.
Yep.
I'm
Kathy,
saying
did you have
before
a
we
question?
invest more money in this, I wouldn't rush to do it.
Just a question, the grant that you were talking about, was that the grant that had been done at the previous senator's office and there was money that was there? That's a different grant? Because it's my understanding that there had been grant money
feasibility study money?
obtained specifically for work at the dock. And then the program never went through. I think the feasibility study at that point, the proposal
Yeah.
was yanked.
I can answer it. That was the Salan grant,
Yes.
and part of that money was used at the dock for some improvements. The rest of it went into getting the senior
van.
van program going. So they redirected the money after the award for that. Remember, there was a Bobcat or something
Right.
that was proposed at one time. This other one was actually 4-finger docks, and then based on the design from the engineers, got changed to feasibility study.
It's my understanding, because I happened to be in the bookkeeping office last week when discussion was happening about this, so I'm sorry I don't have facts and information to give you, but I did hear that from that grant, the grant that was the Doc Bobcat van grant, for lack of a better definition, there's money left from that grant that needs to find a reassigned purpose.
That's great.
And that has to happen very quickly. I believe that Shelley was working on that last week. And actually, when that came up, since I happened to be sitting there, I did ask Shelley, I thought the best source of that would be possibly you, Elaine, with information on tracing that through its channel through the Senate. So I do understand that there is some money there, because I think, Elizabeth, your question was where to start and where would some startup money be, and that might be a place for you to look.
Do you have any idea what capital fund it would be in?
I don't know those H numbers.
Okay, because I don't think we would have, okay, all right. I don't think we received the money yet.
No, I don't think so.
So I guess with that said, if the town was able to identify what portion of matching grant funds there could be, that, the waterfront committee would be happy to try to meet this June 15th deadline to apply for a grant that, could move us to the next step forward.
This, by the way, is kind of a chronic problem here. We had a dormitory grant, whatever that is, way back when. They called us up last year or the year before and said, are you going to use the rest of the money? And nobody knew what it was. Bill may remember the dormitory grant, and it was for something for Stone Church. And we said, okay, we'll use it, and we got the money. But we didn't know what it was for. And, it had been a previous board had done this, so these things fall through the cracks.
All right, well, I'll talk to Shelley tomorrow and find out if there is in fact some, it sounds vaguely familiar, and I'll let you, I'll copy Elaine, Bruce, and we'll see.
In the order of things that we've been talking about, when Patricia mentioned signage, we identified pretty quickly that we thought that a lot could improve fairly quickly if there were additional better signage about how to get places, where to park. I don't know if it's in that slide packet or not, but there's kind of a parking allocation. It's a color sheet, and there's more there than it appears. I mean, I've never been able to find parking down there. So, but apparently it's there. But we also, once we talked to Mary Kay Burba about the connection with the bike trails, the bike path, and so on, that signage right away seemed to be a good fix. Then I would go to kind of the area within the bulkhead itself, surface treatments, ADA impacts. That may be much harder to do in a matter of days. So, longer term as well, I believe it's a requirement for this board to pass or accept the master plan document. So, I have in our head that once the committee's happy with it, it needs to be given to you, reviewed. I don't know if you
Planning board, yeah, it's the
Right.
LWRP and the
Right. So there's a
Historic Hamlet
process.
overlay, so we'll have to go through planning and zoning and,
So I think certainly cooperatively, Patricia could work with you guys to do a small grant CFA application, but on a larger scale, we need to walk through this process.
Yeah, I think
because-
there's a lot of work to do before we can, but I'll check with Shelley about that money. It sounds familiar.
Okay.
Thank you.
So does that mean, I just want to make sure I understand, because there's literally, it's 1 week from today that the application would be due. So you think it would be possible to have an answer by tomorrow? So that
Yeah,
if
I'll
we
be here
can-
tomorrow.
Okay, great.
If I can talk to her, I have it starred and circled here.
Okay, and if we do go forward, I can help you in any way, so.
I mean, if it's 10, 12 grand on the table, whatever it is, we should use it for matching funds and do something.
Those, you may know this, like, grant process, it isn't, what is the schedule for the next funding round to come out? Or isn't even announced yet? It seems to
When you say the
go
next funding round, you don't mean
irregularly.
2015, do you?
Is there another one before then? That's what
Which
we're trying-
You're
which
talking about
In this
grant?
particular
The
case,
CFA?
the CFA grant process.
I don't know the answer to that. I want to say 2015, I think it's annual, but
May,
I
it's
could be
every
wrong
May.
about that. Yeah, but I will find out for you, and I'll email you tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thanks, Patricia. You know, I'm sorry, I apologize. I went out of order, and I always do this when I skipped a presentation from Kyle Irwin, who's here to present to us a marathon proposal. So Kyle, would you come on up?
Yep, and before I start, I have some updated documents for you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me here tonight and letting me present to you our proposal for the Rhinebeck Hudson Valley Marathon that would take place in approximately 1 year from now. The proposed date is May 16th, 2015. That would be on a Saturday. The reason for that, races are often on a Saturday or a Sunday. One of the big things that we'd like to do with this marathon is to promote our local businesses and bring people into the community that maybe haven't been here before or already know about it and give them a reason to come visit. So if they come on a Saturday, they're very likely to stay into a Sunday, and that's really the best way to bring the most revenue and generate the most revenue for the community from this type of event. So if everyone would be okay with that, we looked at the schedule, the calendar from this year. On May 16th is the weekend before Memorial Day, so the town pool is not open. Typically on Memorial Day weekend, there's the antique fair, so it wouldn't conflict with any type of traffic that those events that are typically held every year generate. So I think if the calendar stays somewhat the same, maybe that would be a good date for this year.
So you're
Again,
saying the fairgrounds is not going to be used on May 16?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if the calendar looks similar to the way it's looked this year and previous years, that would potentially be a great weekend. I do know from meeting with Sergeant Dunn that the fairgrounds doesn't decide on their schedule until October. So if we need to change and not have parking at the fairgrounds, which I think the Fall Foliage Marathon has parking at which is a half marathon, has parking at the fairgrounds, but we would come up with several different options.
We could find alternatives. It seems like a good weekend.
Right.
We're eyeballing it, and this is something that would grow. This would be the first marathon, and it would always be on this weekend going forward.
Yes. And in the race season, as far as it being a beautiful time of year here, it's not too close to the Boston Marathon. So race-wise, looking at other races going on in the region, it's a great time of year.
So my concern is just if you have 1,500 people and the fair is doing something, there's going to be a lot of traffic in town.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you could pick a date that the fair is not functioning, there'll be a lot less traffic in town and inconvenience to people who...
So far, this looks like a good
Right.
weekend.
I completely agree with you. We wouldn't want to conflict with any large event at the fairgrounds, which is exactly the reason that we went ahead and are proposing that date. If for some reason the Antiques Fair switched to May 16th, then I would completely agree with you. Year one, highly unlikely we get 1,500 participants. That's just a max. We need to put a number down as a max. If we get several hundred people, I would be thrilled for year one. but we are looking to grow each year.
I'm sorry, what do you think, max, for year one?
For year one, max, I feel comfortable saying we'd at least get 500. Yeah.
That's what we got from the other one we did.
Right. And I have looked at the previous, the fall foliage and their growth rate. They're going to be in their third year this year, I believe. They're projecting to sell out with 1,200 participants, which shows that there is a demand and there is an interest. So I think we could project along similar lines for this type of race. This would be a full and a half, so it would be a larger scale type of event. Okay?
So it would take 8 hours, the event?
Yes, so typically for a full marathon, there is a cutoff, and the cutoff would be 8 hours. So if you turn to page 2, we plan to have an important part of this would be a philanthropic donation. We plan to make a donation to the town rec committee department and the parks. I know that they have plans in place that they would like to do at the town park. We would love to donate to that effort and to make that a continual basis going forward. I'm from Rhinebeck. I grew up working for the town rec department for my mom, who was the town director for many years.
The legendary rec director.
Legendary rec director. So that is a cause close to dear to my heart, so I'd like to start there. And then in line with supporting the community, we'd like to get local teams involved in supporting volunteering at the different first aid stations along the route. And then when they work at an aid station, we would then do something nice. If the field hockey team comes out or the local soccer team comes out, then we would want to show our same support for local athletic teams as well. And then bring in a larger organization such as the American Heart Association, which goes along with cardiovascular exercise. Okay. We do want to make sure that this is a credible race and that race participants who come and do this type of race could then use it as a qualifier for other races. Oftentimes, other races require you to report a certain time, so we would go ahead and pending approval from the town and village board and approval from the working in coordination with the police department, once we know what course route we'll go with, then we would have the USA Track and Field come in and measure the course. We would make that investment up front so that we would be a USATF certified course, and then we would apply to be a USATF sanctioned event. And when you are a sanctioned event, you are able to, you have liability insurance for that event. On top of that, our business already has liability insurance every day of the entire year with a $1 million policy. So we would be covered for the event and in general.
I notice on the fair that it looks like the sheriff's department and the state police are patrolling that and directing traffic as opposed to the town of Rhinebeck police.
Yes. So
How is that arranged?
I could comment on that. I met with Sergeant Dunn, and that is the fairgrounds. I know for their week they bring in it may be the state police, but meeting with Sergeant Dunn in order to cover this type of event, they use basically the entire Rhinebeck Police Department. Some people might be on vacation or their day off, but you could depend on 10 to 12 of the Rhinebeck Police Department. And then for the half marathon, they brought in 3 highway sheriffs, and then as well as 3 state police. So depending on the type of coverage you would need, and that depends on the course, then all of those people would be brought in and work together in collaboration with each other to ensure the safety of the race participants as well as community members. Does that answer your question?
Yes and no. It was really more directed to cost.
We pay the cost, if that
Oh,
answers.
you'll pay the
Yes.
cost.
We receive the bill and we pay the cost. So no, the town board would not be paying any costs for police or anything like that.
Do you foresee the crossing of 9 being for a long period of time?
You know, I met with Kyle over this, and Kyle's met with Pete and emergency services, and the race course will probably be altered, and emergency services and the police department will work with her to come up with something that doesn't involve 9, because that is a concern, is closing it down.
We talked about that. There will be multiple courses that will be drawn up. Then I will meet and collaborate with both Sergeant Dunn as well as other emergency services, and we will all agree on the appropriate course. If there is ever a need, for some reason, if there is a part of a road shut off, and either someone from their home or someone, because they need to go through town and there's a road shut off and they need to go through town and it's a fire department, then obviously the emergency takes priority, runners will be stopped, and that's most important. And that will be communicated to all race participants and has already been discussed as far as in the initial organization of this event. But we can't say we're going to go do this course and then go do it without police.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, people have gotten really annoyed at the not being able to get out of their driveway the last few years.
Absolutely, I'm sure.
And when we did the bridge run, we shut down the bridge a couple years ago and ran from the other side by the toll booths over and past your house and over to CJ's. Those roads are much less traveled, and I didn't see those on here, so I'd suggest you look at those. They go by Bill's house, that one. But, you know, but the part that way, down Morton Road and that's very popular for racing or running,
Yes.
They don't like it. So just expect pushback.
Yes.
And the board should expect pushback.
Well, I live on Mill Road, they go by twice.
I think we need, we'll come up with some course.
This is now the third version. We've been changing and talking about it. It's not, and by third version, it doesn't mean like there was Google Maps is quite easy to use, and it's very easy to change and then say, now are we getting closer, or are we getting further away from it? I know the half marathon does cross 9 in the beginning. We are, if you look at this table, this is the type of thing that I'm developing when we do anything. So this looks at, when could the fastest runner, someone potentially running a 4:30-minute mile, which is, you probably won't have anyone even doing that, and someone running the course cutoff mile, which would be an 18-minute mile, what's the fastest time someone would get to one point, and that's at any turn along the route, and what's the slowest. And so we would even be able to tell someone on Cove Road or on whatever road, we would make them aware if they were going to be unable to leave their home, it would be for this half hour. So we wouldn't say, you're not going to be able to use your house leave your house all day, the race ends at 4 o'clock. That wouldn't be the case. So we are sensitive to that. I understand some people might not like it.
I think more importantly, Kyle's here to take our temperature as a board to see if we support this. And this is, someone who's grown up here, someone who's been involved with sports and recreation her whole life in Rhinebeck. And it's potentially something that can grow from year to year and be, another Sinterklaas, another, event that people come to Rhinebeck to participate in. And we're looking for community support, and that's something that I think our job is, if, which I'm very enthusiastic about this project, is to support it and then get the public to get on board with it.
I'm for it. I have experience with the other one, though, and I know the pitfalls from the other ones that we've run into, and all I'm trying to do is to smooth it out a little bit now, rather than...
You're saying consider another part of town, maybe?
Yeah, there's issues, and parking is an issue. And we've done things to do all this, but there's a lot of issues. And we have the experience base to do. The other thing the town has to remember is this is not a town function. This is not a village function.
No.
This
It's a
is a
private
commercial function, right?
Correct.
So, and that's, we went through with the other one that we were going to make some money for the town and everything else, and I think we got like a quarter a runner or something like that, and that, it wasn't worth the expense that we put into it, supporting it. So, seriously, because we put our people on doing things, I mowed and.
Well, I don't think we're looking at using any town resources other
Well,
than
you're
the
gonna-
town roads.
You're gonna have, where are you gonna park people? You're not gonna park them at the highway garage, it's way too many cars
No,
for there.
the first discussion, obviously, we're trying to do this a year out in order to pay close attention to the concerns that you're bringing up so that we can find great solutions as best as possible
Yeah,
to
and-
any concerns.
Oh,
So I will talk to the fairgrounds. That was the first suggestion that was made to me about parking and see if we could do parking there. Any other suggestions or don't do this?
Yeah, if maybe-
Completely open to hearing.
Maybe it would be great for you to have a meeting, to discuss like what your experience is or.
Well, we parked everybody at the park. And, it was fine unless it rained. And then it was a mess. And that's the way the fairgrounds is gonna be. I don't care, that's a minor detail. I'm just trying to tell you that we have to support this, but also keep our distance, because this is not a town function. So,
It's not a town function, but I think we have to allow it, and then we have to,
I said support it, but keep our distance, that's what I said. And I mean, allowing it is supporting it. Promoting it through our materials is fine, but getting financially involved in this, I think is wrong.
We don't expect you to get financially involved.
I know, the other ones didn't either, but we did.
It's another event here. I know there was a big controversy in the village about the number of events, and at least with the fair, probably 50% of the people were in favor, another 50% thought it just was too much traffic. I don't know, what do we get out of this? I understand, that some people may stay over and it may help the merchants, but what do we get out of it?
What do you get out of it? So, as you already listed a couple of them, so it helps the merchants, some people may stay over. Many of the people from your community enjoy running, will likely participate in the full or half marathon. We will give discounts to everyone from Rhinebeck that signs up for the full or half marathon. We will be giving a donation to the town rec project park.
Maybe the general fund of the town might be better, but that's a controversy we'll have.
So we would definitely be interested in doing that, and would hope as this grows to then continue that. If there are
What
other
kind of
ways that-
contribution are you talking about?
Well, we can discuss that. I'd like to hear what the plans are for different projects, what we could give. We're hoping to get 500. I could base upon that, then give you a number in our next proposal, like this would be the minimum donation. We could absolutely give you that. There would be a lot of people from the surrounding communities that would like to participate. There's a large running community, and providing that type of event for people to participate in, it does add a lot of value to individuals' lives and to your community.
Are there other towns around here that are doing marathons? Are we the...
Yes, there are, but across the river, like Kingston and the Catskills and things like that, yes, and they've only increased in popularity and in their growth over the years. I mean, I remember growing up, there was only the Mad Dash, and now there's the half and the 5K, and I would like to be the person to bring the full and the half.
My only.
could you please come, I'm sorry, Elaine, go ahead while we wait for. You can't help it.
So much for the,
Who is your-
I'm
is this
Liz
your daughter?
Irwin, and I'm
This is my
Kyle's
mother.
community resource. And you asked what will the community get out of it? Well, what I see big time is that my daughter has moved back to the area that she loves, and what you get are people, young people who have grown up here, have moved away, they come back, and they give to your community. Volunteer-wise, whether Kyle settles here in Rhinebeck, so tax dollar-wise, this is what happens with young people. I was also her teacher, and many students that are grown and have their families, and what I'm seeing is that they've come back to our village, to our community. So that's what we get back. So it's what we've fostered from the time they were very young in this community. And I worked with Bruce for many years on the rec committee. What we provided for our young people, and that's what we've always spoken about for years and years and years, about giving to our young, providing program for families, and what do you get back? You get people who come back and want to live here in your community. So that is something else.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mom.
My only concern is some of these roads are very, very narrow. You can barely fit 2 cars down these roads. I like the idea of supporting a marathon for sure, but I know what it's like. I know what it's like as a driver living in Rhinecliff on Morton Road. I take that way to work every day. I mean, these are very, very narrow roads. So if runners are on those roads, it's going to be impossible for traffic going either, like, and it is, I have to say, like, I've been in the car, I've been a driver on River Road with marathon runners, and I'm just like, oh, it's really hard because you almost have to stop in some cases. Like, it really is frustrating. So my only concern is that I think some of these roads are really too narrow to expect the drivers to accommodate it.
So
if it's a lot of people.
some
I don't
of
mind the
them-
wider roads,
Right,
but some of these roads
and
are
I think
almost one ways they should be.
We're not settled on a course route.
Yeah, I think we've made that clear that she's going to come up with a course that.
No, I'm just
that the
letting her
police
know in advance
department-
because I'm seeing all these streets on this grid.
And emergency
And
services.
so I just want to make it clear that all of these streets I'm seeing, these are like almost one-way streets they should be, because they're that narrow.
I think this is a placeholder, wouldn't you say? I mean, Kyle has not met with emergency services and police, Sergeant Dunn, and I've spoken
I
with
get
Pete.
that, but I'm coming from the
and
perspective of a driver who's had to drive down those roads with marathon
I've spoken
runners.
with Pete, and he'll work with her on coming up with something that
I
works for the
understand that, right?
community.
So I think if it's on roads that are wide enough to accommodate it, I don't have a problem with it, but that's my only concern.
Some of the roads you were talking about, the thought was if we totally closed off, and this may not be possible, so no one gasp. Yeah, never mind. If we were to close off one road, maybe it would contain all the runners to one area, so then it wouldn't block off another main route for cars, so everyone could still get to all the different access points they would want, except for the unhappy people who live on that road, absolutely, for that period of time. But so that was part of the thought process in the latest update that you guys are seeing right now, is to say, okay, well, if we closed off this one area, but then that kept all of Mount Rutson open. That was my idea. So I'm just trying to show Sergeant Dunn different ideas to then hear what works best, what's too narrow, what cannot happen, and then we'll go from there.
Kathy, did you have a question or?
Yes, thank you. It's also related to the roads. How far in advance are you committed to having a final route? I haven't heard of this event yet until tonight. It's the first day. By the way, I'm Kathy Kinsella, Town Highway Superintendent. And I've been involved when we were planning many of the other marathons, halves that went on with that, but I haven't heard about this one yet. So I'd like to be able to put our input in, the department's input into that as well, because May is fairly early as well for a marathon, and our spring cleanup and maintenance that has to happen after the winter, a lot depends on how protracted, such as last winter is, in terms of the street sweeping that we do, because you don't want to be running on streets that still have sand and debris on them. That probably won't be safe for your runners. We, don't know what we might have to do in terms of the shoulder work that has to happen. These are things that need to be taken into consideration. I also see that you're looking at county roads, and I don't think the county's been brought in on that, which will also have possible maintenance concerns. We may know of something that's happened on a road or work we may need to do that will take a road out of commission to you. So I urge you to please and get in touch with me and include me in the process as well with this. Highway Department should always be involved in anything that's going on the road. So Thank you.
Thanks. I mean, I guess you're looking for
Yep.
some kind of buy-in from the board so you can proceed.
Well, yes, if the board said you cannot hold this event in this town, then we would be dead in the water. So this is to say, these are our ideas. This is the initial conversations we've started having. I met with Sergeant Dunn. He said at the next meeting, Kathy, that he would bring in all those different parties. So I also don't want to overstep my bounds and meet with the wrong person first.
It's just happened. I just
so-
met with Kyle on,
Yeah, like a week
Thursday,
and a half
right?
ago.
Yeah.
So he said at the next meeting, he would bring in all those different players, and then we would all, put it up on the whiteboard, look at the different ideas, and come to a different event. I worked on races out in California for the entire last race season, and I can tell you that one race I worked on, 3 days before the race, the entire course was changed because there was an issue with the fire department, and they decided to change the entire course. So I get that this is a process.
This is a profit-making thing, this company, what is this
My
company?
company?
Yeah, it's EFAT.
For Exploration, Adventure, and Travel, we do marathon services for established marathons, organizing for individuals and for clubs. We do our own, we're a year old. We do our own international trips to Peru and Patagonia, and then we'd like to have one home-based marathon, which would be this.
And you've put on marathons before?
I have worked as a co-race director with other race directors. This would be the race that I would want to direct. Yes.
Now, would you coordinate with organizations like the Hudson Valley Roadrunners Club?
Absolutely. So we would, everyone within a 200-mile radius, all the race, like all the run club leaders, they all get comped entries. Then everyone from their club get discounted entries. We would bring them in a lot of times, as I've seen before, the run clubs work a certain aid station, with all the Gatorade and all the goos, and they make it their own, and then you have a captain, and the captain's the person that then we coordinate and communicate with. So it's a big thing to put together, so we need enough time to make sure that we do everything correctly and that it's well thought.
I think I'm going to poll the board now. We get the gist of this and see that there's support here so you can go on, continue having your meetings and come back and report to us, and we can see if we can, should we have
I'm for it.
Yeah, as long as my only concern
Great.
was that, right.
Great. Joe?
Yes, I would not like to see it on a date where the fairgrounds is having something. I think there was a lot of traffic this weekend
All right.
on this living thing, so I'd like to be assured that you're not going to have it when the fair is doing something.
Alan?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, so I think we're all for it. You've heard Elaine's concerns about road widths and Joe's concerns about fairground availability. So I think with that, go ahead and have your meetings and come back to us. Be in touch with me, and I'll help you in any way I can. But thank you.
All right, thank you.
And thank you to your community outreach response. Yeah.
Maybe we'll get the county to pave
Okay.
Mill Road.
Moving along here. Suzanne Kelly with our cemetery committee for this is presentation night.
Mine's going to be so much shorter than it was going to be. I know I should have.
Oh, it's great.
Loving you even more tonight. Good night. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I had planned to address two issues. I'll just let you know what they were. One was that you folks had asked me to check on the trust accounts, the cemetery trust accounts. I have done that. I've spoken with several different attorneys who have given me several different answers, but we are getting the final answer very soon. So I should be reporting probably at the next board meeting.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what question
Trust
is this?
accounts.
The trust accounts, the two accounts that are sitting in the general fund that were transferred over with the association in 2002.
This is
We
the
raised this-
perpetual
The perpetual care and the permanent maintenance
funds?
funds. The two funds, yep. And then the other had to do with the deed restriction for the Green Burial Council application that Warren Raplansky is still researching. We got a partial
We
decision.
got a
Yeah, so
late-breaking
I'm
email.
going to wait on that also.
Okay, so you'll come back for that.
I just wanted to give you a few minor updates before I interview Aaron to do the greenhouse gas emissions. One is that the Friends, 5 red oaks were donated to the Friends that will be planted in the Grassmere section. They were donated by John Labatsky's sister. John will be planting them. Joanne Clark donated to have them planted. They are slated to be planted in an area. We already have a green plan that was passed by the town board
Right.
several years ago. So they'll actually be planted right by the mausoleum. So those are going in this week. The 4 signs that you passed remember you passed the signs, remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, they're going in, I believe, next week also. And natural burial is very popular. I think we sold 6 plots. We're in the process of selling 6 plots, yeah, so that's really fast. And the cemetery subcommittee, the tree committee met, and we are setting up a tree planting plan for the old part of the cemetery, at least one section of it. Actually, the cemetery is so big that we're going to sort of do it piece by piece. So that preliminary sketch I'll be bringing to you probably within maybe 1 or 2 meetings to have that passed. So I think that's enough. Oh, there was one other thing, actually, I want to bring up. And it has to do with getting an email address for our caretaker, Gary Slater.
I think,
Not just an address, he has no internet access. This has been an
Yes.
issue. And it really is an issue in terms of communications for us and the committee. It's, I have to reach him by cell phone. It's the only way that I can correspond with him. I can't send him information from the committee. I have to send it to a private address. So if there's a way that we could get internet access to that.
I think the town board has to agree to put the service in,
Yeah.
which I'm for. He is slated, we can get him a computer with our
Well, we have a computer.
grant.
He has a
and-
computer.
And
Just needs access.
he needs internet access.
Yeah.
Alan, you want to look at that and give us a number?
Call Frontier. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
phone call.
I'll work on
kind
it
of
with.
a necessary thing.
Yeah, I agree. Do you guys agree? Is everyone in agreement on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so whether he does that or Bobby does that.
He won't do it, I know that. I know he won't do it. So if there's some other way that we can
I
get
mean,
it.
is there a phone there already?
There's a phone there, yes.
And, yeah,
There's a
then
computer.
then
Yeah.
there's no wiring, all they gotta do is wave their magic wand and put in a modem.
Great, so who will take care of it?
Will he use it? Is he,
Yes, he'll use it, yeah. He's asked for it many times over the years, and
he has a computer, or he?
he has a computer in the office. But also, for the natural burial, for instance, I have people calling me at home.
No, we're aware of it. We
Yeah,
need to do
so
it.
it'd be really, really important that he can correspond with people by email. He hasn't been able to do that.